We'll go ahead and call a regular meeting of Planning and Zoning Commission, City of Pearland, Monday, July 16, 2018 at 7:26 p.m. Let the record show Troy Prati is not present. All other commissioners are present and accounted for. That takes care of item number 1. Moving on to item number 2, the consent agenda. We have items A and B. Consideration possible action, approval of minutes and excused absences. Excused absence, Darrell, Isenberg, Mary Starr from the July 2nd meeting, and approve the P&Z regular meeting minutes for July 2nd. Item B, consideration possible action, replat of fourth partial replat of Shadow Creek Ranch commercial site number 18A. Does anyone wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Hearing none, do I hear a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to item 3, new business. Item A, consideration possible action approval of a flag lot to allow for the development of property. This is a request of Linda D. Day, applicant and owner, for approval of a variance permitted in section 2.6.1.1B1 of the Unified Development Code, Ordinance number 2000T, to allow approval of the creation of an irregularly shaped flag lot within the SR12 single-family zoning district. The general location is 5929 Cottonwood Street. Do I hear a motion for approval?
Second.
I have a motion and a second of staff report.
Basically, this is a request to have a permission to create a flag lot in a property that is zoned SR12. The chart shows the required dimensions of the zoning district, and the intended use is to build a single-family development on the lot. Staff does not recommend approval of this the requested variance. Basically, in a nutshell, dividing this property into 2 lots will have the effect of doubling the density of the residential development where the applicant's property is at. Also, the current configuration of the property is uniform with the rest of the lots in the Cascon subdivision. This map shows the applicant's property outlined in red, and as you can see, the neighboring lots are the same size as the current property. This next slide also shows the configuration that the applicant proposes to create the flag lot outlined in red. And that concludes staff presentation.
We'll start to my right. Darrell, do you have any questions or comments?
I don't see I could be for this just strictly because of the deformity of the lot with the rest of the subdivision. I can't see any reason to have the thing, so I'd be against it.
Laney?
No comment.
Thomas?
I'm kind of with Darrell. I think it kind of breaks up the neighborhood. It adds 2 houses on one lot like everybody else has. It's not the right place for it.
Mary?
I think I'm inclined to agree with him. Really can't see any advantage to anybody on it. And it would be sort of a non-conforming lot, 2 lots in the middle of a subdivision with everything else 1 lot.
I'm in agreement with staff. I can't see a reason to split a lot in amongst the rest of the SR12s. with the lot width that it would create being a good idea. I'm opposed. Any further comment? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by raise your right hand. All those opposed? Motion is denied, 0-5. Moving on to item B, consideration possible action approval of irregular shaped lot to allow for the development of property. This is a request by Lacey Bell, Windrose Services applicant on behalf of SR Pearland 2 LLC for approval of a variance permitted in section 2.6.1B1 of the Unified Development Code Ordinance Number 2000T to allow approval for creation of a irregularly shaped lot within a planned unit development zoning district. The general location is the northwest side of Pearland Parkway at Pebble Creek Drive. Do I hear a motion for approval?
So moved.
Have a motion and a second. Staff report.
This request is to create or to allow the creation of an irregularly shaped lot. If approved, the applicant would actually be coming in with a minor plat that would actually create 3 lots, but one of those lots is an irregularly shaped lot. The chart on the screen shows the difference between the proposed lot that will be the irregularly shaped lot within this development. Staff does support this request for the following reasons: that it is consistent and with the planned unit development, which is a retail commercial area that's already existing. As for the character of the adjacent developments, it will allow a development of a similar retail structure as what is already located in a shopping center. And other than the irregular shape, the lot generally does meet the standards for the zoning district. This plat here, this survey here shows the configuration of the irregular shaped lot. It is the lot that's in the towards the bottom of the where the cursor is at, where there's a thin portion of the lot where it's almost like a flag lot, and then the lot gets wider towards the rear where the commercial structure would be built.
Could I ask a quick question? Would this be to the left of the Academy Center that's built now?
Yes, sir.
So it would go from the street all the way to the very back of the property to
Right.
build adjacent to the retail there to the left of Academy?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
The next slide, oops, where'd it go? There it is. Shows the location of the property in question. And that concludes the staff presentation.
I'll start with Darrell. No comment?
I don't have a problem with this. I think they're trying to, they got an irregular shaped lot and they're just trying to build something in there, and we're going to end up with having a vacancy in there if they're not allowed to do it. So I'd be in favor of it.
I agree with Darrell. I'm for it.
Thomas?
No comments.
No comment.
I think this is one of the items where, being just a regular citizen, I've learned a little bit about commercial property and how this works. So I'm not opposed to this at all, because I do notice there's a place for another business there, and I was wondering how that was going to be filled in. So I guess I know now.
If I could just ask staff to, if we're subdividing this, is there a master property owners association for this lot and this detention pond now? And do we need to have this conditional approval on the creation of a master property association for the detention that's at the back of the lot?
Is that?
I'm not aware of an association, but I'll pass that on to our engineer.
Who's responsible for maintenance of the detention?
Well, as it stands now, the property owner is responsible for it, but there's only one parcel, so it's only one owner. They can't subdivide it, so it's not an issue. once we create a variance request that allows for the flag lot, that means the next thing that's going to happen is a plat will come in, and then if there's a plat, they will subdivide, and then that detention pond that's at the back would be something that we want to make sure is maintained. And when you have two different property owners, that's sometimes where you get conflict, and then the city gets called in to try to resolve that conflict.
Is the applicant here?
No, sir.
So I don't know if it needs to be a condition of the variance request, or if it needs to be a condition when the final plat comes through, or a plat note or something like that. But I believe it's my job to make sure that we are aware of that issue so that y'all can consider it and you deem where it's appropriate to make sure that that issue is resolved.
We can't add a condition to a final plat approval, can we?
Not to a final plat approval, but you don't have to approve a plat. So this isn't,
If it has,
this is just for permission to get the flag lot. Following this will be a final plat, or rather a replat or an amending plat. And you do not have to approve it if the infrastructure is not in place or the facilities aren't in place. And that's something that we consider
certainly
at that
would be
point.
part of the, okay. Well, my opinion is we're looking at the flag lot. I see that as an issue for the next item.
Well, and I think engineering has a,
As far as engineering is concerned, that detention area or facility there in the back, our understanding is the Brazoria Drainage District Number 4 maintains that. But we would entertain a agreement
They cut down the trees.
between the potential, developments that would address maintenance of all, any of the, facilities.
I just want to make sure, and it may be my misunderstanding. I thought the Brazoria County Detention had the property that's closest to the neighborhood there, but on this facility, within the blue lines, I thought that there was a detention pond that the Property Owners Association.
The property line seems to, I can't point from here, but you see the line behind, what is that? We can't read it, but what does that say?
Unrestricted reserve, but I believe there's a restriction actually there, even though it says unrestricted, because it is for drainage purposes only.
I remember that DD4, now I'm remembering when DD4 cleaned out that and cut down some trees, it caused some angst amongst the citizens.
That's there.
So okay, is there any other comments or concerns about this item, voting on this one tonight?
I just wanted to call it to everyone's attention for, if it's just a flag lot, that might not be the issue, but we need to make sure that we communicate the concern when the final plat comes forward or when the application comes forward.
I guess if staff could note that
Yes.
to report back on the next hearing after this, if we need to make any adjustments or talk to the applicant about the drainage situation. Hearing no further additions, are we ready for a vote? All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. None opposed. Item passes 5-0. Does staff have any issue with me skipping to item D and coming back to item C? Okay, if there's no opposition, I'm going to hold off on C. We'll do that one last, and we'll do item D. Now, consideration and possible action on zone change number 18-000010. This is a request of Luke Billiot, applicant on behalf of Horace Scott Clark, owners, for approval of a change in zoning classification from Neighborhood Services NS zoning district to General Commercial GC zoning district on approximately 0.6942 acres of land General location is 5905 and 5909 Bardette Drive, Pearland, Texas. Do I hear a motion for approval?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. This item was previously heard in the joint public hearing. Does staff have anything to add to the presentation previously given?
No, sir.
Does the commission have any comments or questions for staff on this item?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion passes 5-0. Now going back to item C, consideration possible action, UDC number T28, zone change 18-00009. This is a request of the City of Pearland for a proposed amendment to section 4.1.3.2 of the UDC regarding improvements required upon expansion and related planning triggers. Do I hear a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second from Mary. I think I heard you first. We're in discussion with staff, also previously heard in our joint public hearing. I'll open with comments on the process. It's unfortunate that the Planning and Zoning Commission, even though we have to hear these first, or we have to act on them, vote on a recommendation for approval, when the request is made, that staff is acting on a letter from council and trying to figure out what council wants and putting in the document what you see fit as the information that council needs to see in the JPH. I see this commission as doing some of the council's vetting of and asking questions and getting those questions recorded on paper, so that when we go to a JPH with council, that we can talk about them intelligently and know what the intent is and what our body kind of thought in that process. 7 items of change this big is kind of hard to lump into one meeting without dissecting each one a lot. If that's what we need to do tonight, I don't have a problem doing that. But I don't know where the item came from. It came from 2 council members. I knew nothing about it. Of course, I'm not supposed to, I guess. So we're here to talk about what we're going to recommend to council when council recommended the changes. So if council recommended these changes exactly like they're written, I don't really see a reason to discuss them. If council asks for a idea or a set of changes that might make sense and staff put them together, then I see a reason that this commission should look at them and talk about each one further. But if council said this is what they want, I really don't see this commission as needing to make a comment on them. But just in the meeting we just had with council, they weren't very clear on what they want on each of these 7 items, or if these 7 items are the only ones that need to be changed for the issue at hand. There's not a letter saying we need to change the zoning, we need to change the UDC because of this, this, and this. We didn't see that. So I'm not sure what this commission is being asked to do tonight with these seven items. Some of them I don't have a problem with. Some that I heard council had a problem with, I like as a resident of the city, not a developer, not a builder, not a store owner. Just visually, there's some of these that I support, and can sit here and argue pros and cons of each item, good and bad. We've seen instances in the city where a business looks terrible, and there's nothing the city can do about it except some of these triggers, which help those things alleviate those problems as the properties get old and change hands. So,
Chair Tonstill, to address your concerns, I think that there are 2 things that can happen. One is in regards to the procedure for tonight. you don't have to make a recommendation tonight. You can postpone this. You can review the UDC. You could look at how this affects. You could ask staff for additional information. You could do your own research. And then when we come back, when you feel equipped to, since you don't have to legislate from the podium, because we don't want anybody to have you on the dais, and we don't expect you to make legislative action or create legislation within a 2-hour time period. We want you to make your recommendation when you're comfortable with your recommendation, when you're comfortable with the subject matter and you feel that what you're saying has more value versus you being unaware or not having enough information. So one of the things that you can do tonight is make a recommendation to postpone, give us a date when you want that postponement, give us additional information that you want to see, and then staff can bring that information to you. The other is you're a recommending body. While City Council or some members of City Council have expressed opinion, Council has not taken action, and your recommendation might better guide them in what action to take. There are some council members who didn't express an opinion at all tonight. They just said no comment, and we don't know if they want these changes or if they don't want these changes yet. Maybe they're waiting to see if you do your additional research for a better solution. That's entirely a possibility. Or maybe they just didn't want to oppose the other council members with their recommendations tonight. Or maybe they feel the same. We don't know. But regardless, what they have said doesn't have to dictate what you choose to do tonight. You are an autonomous body that makes recommendations, and if you disagree with them, it's okay to say so with your recommendation and give them pause or give them additional things to consider about. Point out different areas where you think that an improvement should trigger a facade, or as Commissioner Tunstall said earlier, why he thought that the setback was required, and have additional examples of that. And then your minutes, in addition to whatever comments you make, could be passed on to City Council so that we're sure at the end of the day, y'all have added your value, and then Council can act accordingly.
Let me ask a quick question on procedure. Can we vote on these independently for each of the 7?
There's a numbering sequence that kind of makes it difficult for how amendments are made because as in the staff report, I believe it's T28, and we would have to have T28 through, 35, if we did it individually or if we brought it all as individual. But you can break it out as to T27A through, F? Nope.
1 through 7.
G, A through G, individually commenting on those things. And then cumulatively, the ones that everybody makes a recommendation for would be what is presented to council, if that makes sense.
Well, it sounded like to me tonight that not even council is really sure about this yet. There was a lot of going back and forth about some of the councilmen looked at some of these and said, and went through them item by item and were against certain ones that were on there, and it was like they'd never seen it before. I hope that where we're leaning is to table this for the night and let us do our due diligence and go back through and look at each one of these and give us a little time, because I think that just throwing something on top of us right now to vote for a change for all of these, we'd be doing nothing more than just saying, okay, whatever staff wants, that's what we're going to do. And I don't think that's the purpose of this body.
I agree. It's supposed to be your opinion based on whatever your due diligence or whatever research you need. And if somebody wants to move to postpone and you want additional information, then we would just ask that you be clear about what it is that you want so that we can get you the information. But if it's something that you think that you can find on your own, like I want to see this different area of town, maybe 35 you feel about differently, State Highway 35, or maybe over in the Spectrum area where we've invested a lot of money, you feel differently than you do in areas of town where we haven't invested money, and whether these triggers should be there. Or maybe these triggers are more important when something abuts residential and you want those additional buffers. And if you want to look around town on your own to do that, you're absolutely welcome. If there's additional research from your staff, we just ask that you give staff a better indication of what it is that you need so that when we bring it back to you, we don't leave you with unanswered questions.
I think that, you know, let me see, 5, 6, and 7, I don't think anybody really has any heartburn over any of that. I think that's a good move. But 2, 3, and 4, that's where all the discussion was during the JPH. So, you know, I just feel like that I personally would like to have a little bit more time to go and look at some of this and think about it, because Laney brought up a good point, removing the exceptions for facade requirements for buildings built prior to 1981. Well, that's also included in her historic buildings and such. You know, we don't want to change some of those. Now, I agree with Daniel. The ones that were, you've got a convenience store and they change it to a tile company or a cabinet company or something like that. Yeah, then that right there, we want to change that instead of it just being a bunch of rock out in front of the place. But you know, there's some of the places, you know, it's just awful vague. It looks like that we ought to have exceptions for anything that has to do with any type of history. And you know, it's just like the downtown. You know, I've been hearing downtown district. You know, and I know everybody's kind of thinking a thing like they got up in Spring and stuff. I don't know if that's ever possible, but we're never going to be able to do that. If we go in there and we change all those facades and stuff in a downtown area and make them all modernized, you just done away with your downtown area, your old town area. Let me put it that way, your old town area. So I personally would like to at least have the 2 weeks to go back and look at some of this stuff and get some more information on it, and give me time to look at the UDCs where these comply and stuff, and see everything that we're changing and stuff.
Could I ask a quick question? When this was requested by council to staff or initiated by council, did it come with a letter or any direction as far as what the petitioning council members wish to address? Were these the 7 specific items they wanted changed and the resulting?
Did they give you something in writing, or did they verbalize it?
I remember correctly, it was a letter stating the planning triggers section.
I didn't see the request for the council item, so I don't know, but it would have been in writing. It would have been 2 council members, but it might have just said, I'd like to review the triggers, the UDC triggers compliance section, and not spelling out exactly. And that's why staff created so many different things, in this case, a list of 7, to do their best to address all of the trigger issues.
I find it interesting, the exception to petitioning for a change in the UDC excludes council from having to give the nature of the amendment and the reason for the amendment. So council doesn't have to do that per the UDC. Anyone else, like this commission, citizens, landowners, or another board, would have to petition with a reason for the change. Reason and nature for the change, of the nature of the change and the reason. So to look at all 7 of these, I would, you know, for me to make a decision on all 7 in the next few weeks, or if we table this for postpone it for another meeting, 2 weeks or a month away, I would like to see the reasoning or a thought behind the change and what examples within planning that this change would either help or hinder. Why was it brought? Why is that a specific change that needs to happen? Did a business come in and have a complaint about it? Did it, you know, where was it from? And if that's the case, the details of it, so that we don't look at this 10, like just take number 1, the 10%. Okay, 10%.
Can you imagine 10% more traffic at a Chick-fil-A and not having any additional improvements? I mean, it already backs up onto the main, it already backs onto the thoroughfares. It gives you an extra shot at correcting some of the errors of the past. I think going to 20 is a little excessive to me, but that's,
And I guess my point is, I don't know that. I don't know that.
that's what I'm saying.
You know,
Yeah.
depending on the size of the property, 20% could be
Nothing.
minor,
Or it could be a
or it
lot.
could be huge. You take let's just use the Chick-fil-A example. You add 20% to a Chick-fil-A that is already landlocked and has issues, that's a problem. But if we change this, then Chick-fil-A could come expand to 20% more and not have any issues. Which I don't think anybody would have a problem with Chick-fil-A getting 20% bigger, by the way.
One of the
Just
big,
wanted her to say that.
one of the big problems is 10% sounds okay up to a point. But if you've got a small business, with a small building, what you need to do, 10% may not be anywhere near what you need to be able to do, but then you're going to be limited to 10%. I don't know whether you can come up with a scale now. I know I read in some of the information this afternoon that you had looked at other areas and other cities and what their requirements were, and 10% seemed to be about what they used. But 10% of 20,000 square feet is a lot of extra square footage. But 10% of 400 square feet is not a whole lot. So if you look at it like that, it's what the business really needs instead of a percentage.
Well,
I think some of those limitations of percentages sound good and they're a good guide, but maybe we need a sliding scale to
Well,
match the size.
and I think number 5 covers that with it. It has to be more than 500 square feet.
Well, yeah,
So, I mean, I think that's kind of,
up to
that's
a point.
covered. Yeah,
Up to a point.
but
But there was some documentation in something I read this afternoon when I was going through all this from some other cities. But I'm glad, I like to see the fact that if you change the occupancy of the building and it remains basically the same, that there's no triggers. Because if a plumbing company is there and they sell to another plumbing company that's going to occupy it, they shouldn't have to do all this upgrade at that time. That part I like, but some of the other I'm not so sure of. Some of the facade is always going to be a problem.
Well, we have a case that we looked at on, I guess it was O'Day Road,
Yes.
that the person bought the building, it wasn't in compliance, the changes were more than the triggers, the cost to do it was prohibitive to the project, and they basically lost all.
Right.
They lost all around because they couldn't move their business, they couldn't use the property, they probably couldn't sell it for what they paid for it. But the excuse there was they didn't know the triggers, they didn't know the system, which isn't our fault. But that piece of property is sitting there still to this day, I think vacant, maybe not. Not certain. It definitely doesn't look any better than it did back when we looked at the change. So I can see where somebody wants to take a business on Roy Road, and there's a bunch of them around the city that are fine buildings. Of course, they have to meet code. That's something that applies to all.
But meeting the code for wiring and plumbing and stuff is totally different.
That's different. The UDC requirements, we're going to come in and tell a business they need to build certain types of fencing when there's already a fence around it. We need to tell them, I agree with the landscaping, but do I agree with the parking lot having to be asphalt or concrete? No, not at all. There's businesses along 518 that have done the same thing. They want to expand their parking lot and they can't. even though they have a reason to expand their parking lot to a non-asphalt thing for events, but they can't do it without triggering the UDC and causing more cost. That's limiting that business from doing more business in the city, and for what? Just so we see a concrete parking lot versus gravel? It doesn't.
Means that we can get more flooding because water runs faster off concrete.
So, I can see both sides of it. I can see we want to improve things and make the city look better, but when you have a building that's metal and it's been metal since it was built, I don't see a reason to tell that person they need to come back and make that building stucco. So I would like more time to study these 7. If this is the 7 that's in front of the commission, and maybe look at some of the other ones, I'm in favor of postponing this for the 4th meeting past this one. I believe so.
Like the middle of September.
Is it
Would be 2 in
Is it
August.
okay to poll the commission if they would agree to postponing, or do we just need to vote on it?
You can make a motion, yes, sir.
The chair wishes to make a motion to postpone for, let's look at where we're at.
September 17th.
Look at the screens. Staff has pulled up the next round of calendars. And if you could choose the date that you're wanting to postpone it to.
Today is highlighted here. Pick a date.
September 10th?
September 10th.
Wait a minute.
So I make a motion to postpone till September 10th. Have a motion and a second to postpone to September 10th. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion to postpone passes 5-0. Will be heard on September 10th, 2018. Moving on to item 4, Commissioner's Activity Report. Does anyone have anything to add? Laney? No? Okay. I guess one item I want to discuss in activity report is that procedure for, I would like for staff, legal, both to present to, if y'all are in agreement, to the commission what the procedure is for initiating change to the UDC from planning and zoning. The section that I read earlier allows for P&Z to do that. I would like to know the procedure that this body takes to do that. Any other question? Next P&Z meeting, item 2 is August 6th, 2018. And I believe that's when we'll hear the item that was postponed from tonight. Where'd it go? CUP 180014. If I don't have a problem with you speaking, but you'll have to come up to the mic and give your name and address for the record. Yeah, and you have to fill out the purple form.
All right, so my name is Joshua Kester. I work with TriTech on consent item 82. It was 18-00082, the 4th replat at Shadow Creek Ranch. It was a consent item for the plat, but there's a water and sewer easement that was dedicated to the city by separate instrument that was running along the original alignment of Kirby Drive. Kirby Drive has since been realigned, and that easement is kind of still sitting there from the old alignment. So my request was to release that easement, or for the city to grant a release of that easement as At first, I thought it was from the replat. It was dedicated by the plat, but it was actually dedicated by separate instrument. And I have a zip file with all of it on there.
Okay, well, I appreciate your comments, and staff has recorded those. I don't believe that's an item the P&Z handles.
Okay.
But staff, if you fill out the form and talk to staff, they'll let you know the procedure and what body will hear that petition.
Okay. Okay.
Commissioner Tunstall, if I'm understanding, I'm sorry, sir, I didn't catch your name.
Joshua Kester.
I'm understanding Joshua Kester correctly. He's suggesting that an item that you have already voted on may need to be amended. What I would recommend is if that turns out to be true, it's more complicated to undo what you did tonight in the future. So instead, what you would want to do is somebody would make a motion to reconsider the consent agenda, pull item B off of the consent agenda, and then postpone that item until the issue is resolved. And then we would come back, most likely on the August 6th hearing. We might have missed the submittal date to have that.
Well, the plat is okay with showing the instrument or the easement on there because it was dedicated by separate instrument. So the request really is to release that easement from separate instrument. But because it was a separate instrument, I'm assuming that the plat is not going to be able to accomplish releasing it. So I guess my request would be to know how to release the easement from the city. It was granted to the city.
And I don't have an answer for you tonight, sir.
Yeah.
I don't have that information in front of you,
Okay.
in front of me. So either it goes forward tonight as the replat,
Right.
or if based on what you're saying, the commission wants to reconsider the item and then postpone voting on that until a future date when we're sure that it's resolved, we can do that.
There has already been easements already put back in place from consequent replats, so the easements are in place. It's just really this release that is separate from the plat. So
Now,
really
city
wouldn't
staff
want
can
to.
research this issue. Basically, that easement was based on a old alignment of the street that is
Right.
not there anymore because the alignment of Kirby Drive has changed, and the applicant is showing an easement that will conform to the current layout of Kirby Drive.
Right. It exists, but the Kirby has been realigned and easements have been placed.
What I'm hearing is dialogue for an item that's already been voted on and that is no longer on the agenda, and I
Right.
fear that somebody might suggest that that is a violation of the Texas Open Meetings Act. So unless we have a motion to reconsider and then put it back on the table so that we can dialogue it, I think we need to not discuss it any further.
Okay.
The chair makes a motion to reconsider the consent agenda.
I second.
I have a motion and a second to reconsider the consent agenda. All those in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Motion passes 5-0. So going back to the consent agenda, we have two items, items A and B. A is the consideration approval of minutes and excuse absence, and item B is the consideration of possible action replat of fourth partial replat of Shadow Creek Ranch commercial site number 18A. The chair wishes to remove item B from the consent agenda, leaving items A, 1, and 2. Does anybody wish to remove anything else? Hearing none, we have the consent agenda, item A, items A1 and A2 for approval. Do I hear a motion for approval?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second from Mary Starr. All those in favor of the approval of the consent agenda? Motion passes 5-0. No. Did he just leave?
He left.
Did he leave his zip file?
No. Table. No.
Based on what was said, if we put this item back on the agenda, Vince or somebody on staff, do you think that you can articulate what the concern is and give guidance as to whether or not staff recommends approval of this tonight or whether we need to postpone to show different alignments?
I'd recommend postponing just to get this cleaned up and straightened out and resolved at a future date.
I wouldn't want an approval to make something more difficult later. I mean, from what you said.
And
Yes,
so-
sir.
And
So
that
we
would
have
also
item-
allow the applicant to be here for that motion.
Yes, that would be good because this wasn't the applicant. So we have item B. We have a motion for approval of item B. The chair wishes to revise. Well, we still have to make a motion to postpone. Which-
Does staff know what the decision deadline is for this final plat?
That'd be this Friday.
So because we won't be able to get it posted and have the meeting by this Friday, to have another meeting on this, and because the applicant, or whoever it was that came in here, I think he was on behalf of the applicant. I know it was Joshua Kester, I'm sorry. So without their permission to, without a request on his behalf to push it to another date, staff's recommendation is going to be that you deny the plat tonight until this issue is resolved.
Okay, we have a motion for approval on the table. Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor, signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Motion is denied, 0-5. Moving back to our agenda, that leaves us at item 5 to adjourn at 8:12.